That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you. Leave? You parasite wife living off dad. Parasite? Did you really think that of me? Well, isn't it true? You can only live because dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite. I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together, that's my line. Okay, I'll leave then. After finishing shopping, I went to change into my room clothes in the room mat, and I shared. That's when I saw something shocking. Not a single piece of my belongings was there. From clothes to bags to even a single piece of underwear, nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there. But all of mine was completely gone. Could it not be a thief? I decided to ask Sarah, who was at home during my absence. Thinking this, I knocked on Sarah's door. What do you want? Sarah, looking displeased, peeked a little through the door gap. Sarah, I can't find my belongings. Do you know anything? Only my stuff is missing. Oh, that. I took care of all of it. Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. I am Jenny. I used to work in sales but quit when I got married. I met Matt, who is 8 years younger than me, through a friend. When I was 37, Matt was bright and full of topics, and we hit it off despite meeting for the first time. We started dating a few months into the relationship. Matt approached me with a serious look. Actually, there's something I have to tell you, Jenny. What is it? What's wrong? Actually, I have a daughter. It was completely unexpected. At that time, Matt was 29 years old. When I was 29, I had no romantic encounters and was focused on my work. To think that he already had a child at such an age, while shocked, I managed to ask, Really? How old is your daughter? She just turned 11. What? 11, that means she was born when I was 18. The sudden confession made my head spin. I struggled to take in Matt's words. Matt had a shotgun marriage with his high school girlfriend when he was 18. His ex-wife dropped out of college soon after enrolling, and their life with the daughter began. However, being young and wanting to enjoy life, she left him and their daughter. I'm sorry to bring this up now, but as I started thinking about a future with you, Jenny, I felt I couldn't keep this a secret any longer. Yeah, I'm honestly shocked. I understand, but I want to be with you, Jenny. I want us to be a family. That's why I had to be honest. Honestly, I was shaken by Matt's confession. Here I was, starting a new relationship at this age. Even if I didn't say it out loud, it was true that I had considered marriage. However, I hadn't realized that the person I was considering marrying was divorced and already had a child. If I broke up with Matt now, I might never get married. As I repeated Matt's words in my head, I contemplated this. Jenny, I want to marry you. I know I've suddenly shared a lot, and it might be confusing, but I want you to think about it seriously. Matt looked at me earnestly. I was truly at a crossroads in my life. 7 years after Matt's confession, I was living with Matt and my stepdaughter, Sarah. Sarah, who wanted to become a doctor, had become a freshman in medical school. Matt often boasted about Sarah, his proud daughter. He had always been indulgent towards Sarah, perhaps out of a sense of guilt for her having grown up without a mother, but it was excessive. He bought her whatever she wanted, and Sarah grew up without learning restraint. I tried to instill proper values in her, hoping she would become a decent person. However, it seemed that my parental concern was nothing but a nuisance to her. Sarah hurled horrible insults at me. Don't act so high and mighty just because you're old. At that moment, I felt foolish. I decided to stop doing everything for Sarah. From then on, I resolved to only do the bare minimum. One weekday, as usual, I prepared breakfast for 3 and set the table. Matt began eating as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah took a bite in silence, then ostentatiously sighed. "Jenny, your cooking never improves, does it?" Hearing that, I thought to myself, not this again. Lately, Sarah's complaints about everything I do had become more noticeable. "You should try being forced to eat something this bad every day." Sarah stormed out of the living room with a huff. Matt just continued eating silently. It was as if he wasn't even listening. In such moments, Matt would not stand up for me. I had no allies, yet I didn't feel particularly distressed by the situation. There was no need for me to devote myself to someone who didn't care about me. It wasn't just bravado. I truly believed this. Sarah's lack of common sense was troubling, but there were other issues that distressed me. It was Matt's terrible spending habits. Besides indulging Sarah with whatever she wanted, Matt also loved to buy expensive items, bags, shoes, watches, anything that was considered high-end. When he ran out of money, he would come to me, begging for more. "Jenny, I need you to prepare $500 by tomorrow." Again, this is the second time this month. I've told you to get your financial sense straightened out multiple times. Shut up. This is how I relieve stress. Just get it ready. I don't intend to give you any more money. Money doesn't grow on trees. When I rebuked Matt, he guzzled down a can of beer. Someone like you who stays at home all day couldn't possibly understand the burdens of working outside. That's no way to speak. I have my own difficulties, too. Jobs have days off, but housework doesn't. Neither you nor Sarah help out with the chores. Matt slammed his hand on the table with a loud thud. The sound echoed through the living room. Shut up. A carefree housewife should just listen to her husband. Hurry up and get the money. Loudly berated, I instinctively shrank away as Matt stood up abruptly. An empty beer can thrown towards me, almost hitting my shoulder. Matt tended to become aggressive when something displeased him, especially when he had been drinking. Once, during a similar conversation, he had hit me, and since then, I had decided to avoid contradicting him as much as possible. "All right, I can't manage $500, but I'll prepare what I can, so please stop threatening me like that." "Good, you understand. Don't start opposing me from the beginning." With a snort, Matt opened a new can of beer and began drinking. Why am I still here? I had started to lose sight of the meaning of continuing as a family after being treated this way. One day, following such a life, Sarah came home early from school as her afternoon classes had been canceled. However, we didn't really spend any time together. Sarah stayed in her room and didn't come out. I remembered that the fridge was almost empty since I hadn't gone shopping. If it were just me, I could manage with takeout or store food, but it's different with a family. Feeling it was a hassle. I eventually got up. About an hour later, after shopping, I stuffed the groceries into the fridge and headed to the room I shared with Matt to change into my home clothes. Then, a shocking sight caught my eye. There was not a single piece of my belongings in the room, from clothes to bags, even down to a single piece of underwear. Nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there. But all of mine had been completely removed. It couldn't have been a thief. Could it? I decided to ask Sarah, who had been at home while I was shopping. Knocking on Sarah's door, I asked, "What do you want, Sarah?" Looking displeased, she peeked a little through the door gap. "Sarah, I can't find my belongings." "Do you know anything?" "Only my stuff is missing." "Oh, that. I took care of all of it." Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. "You took care of it? What do you mean?" "I don't want to live with you anymore, so I prepared everything to make it easy for you to move out." "Lightly, are you telling me to leave the house?" "Don't put it that way. It's tiring to live with a stepdaughter you're not related to by blood, right? Think of it as a choice for both of us to be free." I couldn't comprehend Sarah's outrageous behavior, which she claimed was for my sake. Even if her argument held, she had no right to throw away someone else's belongings. There were many important things in my belongings. Where did you throw them? They're out at the back door. I've called the waste collectors, so if they haven't come yet, you might still find them there. In a panic, I rushed out to the back door. Fortunately, the waste collectors hadn't arrived yet, and my belongings were piled up in several trash bags. I retrieved them and visited Sarah again. That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you. Leave, you parasite wife living off dad. Parasite, did you really think that of me? Well, isn't it true? You can only live because dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite. I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together. That's my line. Sigh. Okay, I'll leave then. Hearing my words, Sarah's face brightened instantly. Yay, honestly, I thought you would make more of a fuss, but I'm glad you accepted it so easily. Serves you right, old lady. I had endured because we were family, but it had finally become ridiculous. Staying with these people was just a waste of time. Fortunately or unfortunately, thanks to Sarah, I was spared the trouble of packing up. I decided to leave the house that very day. After leaving, I received no contact from Matt. Normally, one would expect at least a phone call, but the lack of communication was evidence that Matt had no intention of repairing our relationship. I also did not contact Matt or Sarah. I was savoring the happiness of being able to use my time solely for myself. Since my parents' home was far away and I was not yet divorced, it wasn't realistic to return there with all my belongings. So I rented a short-stay apartment near the nearest station and was living there. About 6 months after leaving, my smartphone alerted me to an incoming call. Sarah's name appeared on the display. I ignored it at first, but she kept calling over and over, so I finally gave in and answered the phone. What do you want? You keep calling. It's annoying. Finally, stop ignoring me. Suddenly, a scream, like a piercing voice, came through. I instinctively pulled the smartphone away from my ear. You don't have to yell, I can hear you. You've never contacted me before, so what do you want now? It's something serious. Today the university told me that my tuition hasn't been paid. They said I can't advance to the next year if it isn't paid by the deadline. Why haven't you handled it? Why don't you ask your dad about that? He's always busy with work during the weekdays, so it's your job to handle such matters. It's your role to take care of the money he gives and make the transfer. It's terrible that you're causing me trouble by not doing what you should. Even in this situation, it seemed Matt hadn't told Sarah the truth. Utterly dismayed, I decided to tell her the truth. Look, the person who was paying your tuition wasn't your dad. Huh. What do you mean? I was the one paying it, but after everything that happened, and since we're not living together anymore, I have no obligation to spend money on you. I don't plan to pay anymore, so just so you know. Hearing my words, Sarah was silent for a while, but then burst out laughing. What a thing to say! As if a housewife like you could afford medical school tuition. You must be making excuses for misusing the money you got from Dad. It's pathetic. You can think what you want. If you really believe Matt is paying your tuition, tell him to make the payment right away. You can make bank transfers online these days, you know. Are you still saying that? You'll just embarrass yourself with such a blatant lie. I wouldn't mind forgiving you if you just admit it now. The audacity to take such a tone when her advancement is at stake is astonishing. It's the epitome of shamelessness. You're free to say what you want, but I'm only telling you the truth. Shameless woman. I'll check with Dad then. Good riddance to a wicked woman like you. After saying her piece, Sarah abruptly hung up the phone. Would Matt tell his daughter the truth? I didn't care what became of those two heartless people, but dealing with them was a hassle. One day, while staring at my computer screen, Sarah called again. It had been about 2 weeks since our last conversation. Dad really hasn't been paying the tuition. Well, of course. I was the one who actually paid. Maybe he wanted to impress his daughter. But you were a housewife. How could you pay for medical school tuition? I'm not just a housewife, I replied. Sarah gasped for a moment. Then in a small voice she muttered, "What? I've told you before I work from home." "That's a lie. I never heard that," Sarah continued. "You just did. Listen, or maybe you thought what I say isn't worth listening to. That's absolutely a lie. You just forgot to say it." As Sarah struggled with her excuses, I continued the conversation. "I'm a programmer. I can work just with a computer, and I used to work at an IT company before we got married. I have plenty of job requests." "Programming? That job requires special knowledge, doesn't it? If you're going to make up something, at least come up with a better lie." "I told you I worked at an IT company. I was in sales, so I had to know some basic knowledge, and I didn't start from nothing. It turns out I'm quite suited for this meticulous input work. I'm actually pretty good at it." "No way. I thought you were just a parasite living off Dad's income." "That's your dad's story. Matt spends all his salary and hardly contributes anything to the living expenses." Sarah's shocked expression was visible. It must be shocking to be confronted with the fact that everything she believed was a lie. "I've been the one paying for your tuition, groceries, utilities, and all other living expenses." "You mean Dad hasn't been putting any money into the house? Then what does he spend his earnings on?" "I don't know what he spends it on. He never tells me, but it's definitely all for himself. Even so, I haven't heard from Matt at all. How are you managing to live?" "How are we managing? It's been the same as before you left. You might want to check on that. If Matt continues spending money the same way, he'll go bankrupt soon, don't you think? You'll lose the luxury of attending university." "No way," Sarah muttered quietly, then hung up the phone. Was it too harsh to have such a conversation with a daughter, even if she is my stepdaughter? I stopped myself from feeling any pity. Sarah is 18. She is an adult. She needs to rethink her way of considering only herself, even if it means hurting others. I turned back to my computer and resumed work. A few days after telling Sarah the truth, Matt called me. It had been over 6 months since I left the house, and this was the first time he had contacted me. "What did you tell Sarah?" "What do you mean, what did I tell her?" "I just told her the truth, that I was the one paying for all our living expenses." "You shouldn't have said that. Now Sarah is calling me a liar. She won't even talk to me properly. It's all your fault." His selfishness left me only able to sigh. "The real issue is your reckless spending. You had me pay all the living expenses, and when you ran out of money for fun, you'd ask me for more." "How can you even say such things?" "Shut up. It's the wife's duty to support her husband who works outside." "Who's being arrogant now? Talk to me about duties when you've contributed even a penny to our living expenses. You have no right to speak when you only spend money on your own entertainment." "Is that all you wanted to say? I'm hanging up now. It's a waste of my time." Wait. His tone suddenly changed to one of panic. "Since you left, I've been struggling because there's no money for living expenses. I'll forgive you if you apologize now, so come back home." I was speechless at his continued arrogance, even in desperation. In the end, he only thought about himself. As I stayed silent, Matt kept talking. "I can't maintain the same lifestyle with my earnings alone. I've taken on debts, but I have no way to pay them back. If you come back, everything will be as it was. You must be lonely on your own, too." "You really have some nerve. You earn a decent salary after all, yet you're still in debt. Are you still wasting money?" "I have my own reasons. I can't just change my spending habits overnight, right? You need to show off to keep the girls at the nightclubs from running away." Matt's reaction was more clueless than I expected, and I almost burst out laughing. It must have been unexpected for him. He thought he had hidden it well. I know about you frequenting nightclubs and how smitten you are with one of the girls there. You've been telling her you'll lavish her with a luxurious life once we're divorced. How? How did you know about that? I have business dealings with your company. One of your colleagues who is in charge told me. There's been gossip about your affairs, and he thought it would be prudent to inform me. Damn it, who spilled that? I got curious, so I hired a detective to investigate. The evidence just kept piling up. Fine dining, buying her designer bags and jewelry. It's no wonder your salary vanishes if you spend like that. Matt fell silent. He probably never thought I would find out, and that it would become a topic of gossip in his workplace. It was sloppy of him. I hear there's also gossip about your previous wife. What do you mean? The reason for your divorce. You told me she left because she wanted to play around, but the rumor is it was due to your infidelity. What? That rumor has spread too. That reaction, should I take it as confirmation that the rumor is true? Well, I don't have proof and I don't know the truth, but I can't trust anything about you anymore. Please, let's get a divorce. Matt kept ranting about not accepting a divorce and wanting me to come back, but he never apologized. Even if he apologized now, there's no way I'd return to that house. But I was thoroughly disappointed with his selfishness. When I mentioned taking it to court if he continued to resist, he finally conceded to the divorce. Now I can truly be free. I felt relieved. I was officially able to divorce Matt. The lawyer I hired was very competent and went out of his way to make sure Matt really felt the consequences as I wanted. Matt's spending and abuse, along with Sarah's harsh words, were all documented, and based on that, I demanded compensation. I requested a lump sum payment to avoid any future dealings, and he paid it all. The lawyer even spoke to the girl Matt was involved with, negotiating not to sue her if she told the truth. Asking her what happened between them, she confessed everything about the years Matt spent lavishly on her that led to Matt being banned from the nightclub, and he could no longer meet the girl he had been supporting so generously. However, his poor financial habits did not improve, and he continued to accumulate debt, which has now reached an unmanageable amount. As for Sarah, Matt couldn't afford her college fees, and she had to drop out of the university she had just entered. She's been trying to find a job to pay off the debts, but due to her pride in wanting to become a doctor, she looks down on many jobs and has been repeatedly rejected. If they had cherished their family, they could have continued to live a stable life, but now it serves them right. As for me, I'm enjoying a life where I can freely spend my time and money on myself. Though I'm not very materialistic, I do enjoy sipping good wine the night before a day off or eating out at nice restaurants. Now I'm planning a solo trip abroad. If I ever find a partner in the future, I hope it will be someone who can cherish each other. Thinking about this, I enjoy my life alone.
I was watering my roses when my mother-in-law, Diana, walked in like she owned the place. She carried her fancy handbag and wore a smile that always meant trouble. "Alexandra, dear," she said sweetly, "I have great news." I put down my watering can, already suspicious. After 8 years of marriage to her son, Michael, I knew her great news was never good for me. "I've sold the house," she announced proudly, "about a great price. The buyers will take it in 30 days. I froze. Our home. The house Michael and I had spent years fixing up. The place where we planned to start a family. And here was Diana, acting like it was just another casual topic. "Interesting," I said, keeping my voice calm. "And how did you sell a house that isn't yours?" Diana smiled wider. "Oh, don't be difficult, dear. The house is in Michael's name, and as his mother, I'm just helping him make smart choices. He needs a fresh start. This place is holding him back. The money will help him start his new life with Jessica." My heart stopped. Jessica, Michael's 25-year-old assistant, the one Deanna kept praising. "Michael agreed to this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Lately, he'd been distant, working late, barely talking to me. Of course, Diana said, pulling out some papers. He signed the agreement last week. Jessica helped him see reason. They're perfect together. Sometimes we have to accept change, Alexandra. You just don't fit in our family anymore. I felt oddly calm. Diana had no idea of the conversation I'd had with Michael's father before he passed away, or the legal papers he left me. You're right, Diana, I said softly. Things do change. She looked confused for a moment but quickly recovered. I'm glad you understand. The buyers want to see the house next week. Make sure it looks nice. I picked up my watering can. Of course. I'll make sure everything is exactly as it should be. She hesitated, probably expecting tears or a fight. Instead, I was calm, and that unsettled her. Good, she said, though her smile wasn't as confident. You should start packing. As she left, I made 2 phone calls, one to James Harrison, our family lawyer, and another to Robert Chen, the private investigator I had hired 3 months ago. That evening, Michael came home and looked surprised to see me calmly reading a book. Your mother stopped by, I said. She told me about the house. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit. Alex, I can explain. No need, I interrupted. I get it. You and Jessica need a fresh start. This house is in your way. That's what your mother said, right? He looked guilty. It's not like that. Things haven't been good between us. Jessica, she understands me. She's 25, Michael. You're 42, I said. But that's not really the issue, is it? The issue is that you think you can sell this house without my permission. The house is in my name, he said firmly. Mom found cash buyers. It's done, Alex. I'm sorry, but maybe this is for the best. I stood up, carefully marking my page in my book. You know what's funny about clean breaks, Michael? They only work if everything is actually clean. He frowned, confused. What does that mean? You'll find out soon enough, I said, walking upstairs. Oh, and don't worry about the house being ready for the buyers next week. I'll make sure everything is exactly as it should be. As I climbed the stairs, I felt his eyes on me, trying to figure out why I wasn't falling apart. Like his mother, he had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I met James Harrison at his office downtown. He had been the family's lawyer for years and knew all of Michael's father's final decisions. They really think they can sell the house? James asked, adjusting his glasses as he looked over the listing agreement. Diana already found buyers, I said, sipping my coffee. She expects me to have everything ready for a walkthrough next week. James shook his head and pulled out a thick folder. I assume you haven't told them about this? He placed an important document on the desk. I smiled. Not yet. Howard asked me to keep this quiet unless absolutely necessary. I think this situation qualifies. 2 years ago, before he passed away, my father-in-law called me to his hospital room. Unlike Diana, he wasn't blind to Michael's flaws. He worried about his son's decisions and what might happen when he was gone. I've made arrangements, Howard told me. The house isn't just in Michael's name. I made sure of that. You'll be protected. James has the paperwork. Looking at those documents now, I felt grateful for his foresight. The house had been a wedding gift, but it was legally owned by both Michael and me. That meant Michael couldn't sell it without my consent. Diana's listing agreement was worthless. James picked up his phone. Should I call Diana's real estate agent now, or do you want to let them carry on a little longer? I thought about Diana's smug smile and Michael's betrayal. Let's wait, I decided. I want to see what else they try. That afternoon, my private investigator, Robert Chen, sent me his latest report. The evidence was solid: hotel receipts, secret meetings, and proof that Michael had been using his firm's money to pay for his affair with Jessica. I forwarded it all to James and went home, where I found moving boxes stacked in the foyer. Diana had sent them as a hint that I should start packing. Instead, I went to my office, unlocking the secret compartment in my desk. Inside were the most important papers: the house deed, Howard's letters, and the USB drive containing Robert's findings. Diana might control people with lies and manipulation, but I had something stronger: facts and legal truth. That night, Michael came home late, smelling like expensive perfume. He hesitated when he saw the moving boxes still untouched. Alex, he said in a patronizing tone, you're making this harder on yourself. Mom is just trying to help. I glanced up from my laptop, where I was reviewing the latest photos of him and Jessica at a hotel that afternoon. How thoughtful of her, I said. And how was your meeting with the Thompson client today? He froze just for a second. There was no Thompson client. He had used that excuse to meet Jessica. Fine, he said quickly. Just fine. Look, about the house. Don't worry about the house, Michael. I cut him off. Everything will work out exactly as it should. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Why are you so calm? I closed my laptop and met his gaze. Your father taught me a lot before he passed. He understood people. Marriage. Trust. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Howard had always seen his weaknesses and had tried to make him a better man. In the end, he had planned for the worst. Dad's been gone for 2 years, Michael muttered. This has nothing to do with him. You'd be surprised, I said, heading upstairs. That night, I remembered Howard's last words. Don't let them bully you, Alex. You're stronger than all of them combined. Back then, I didn't fully understand what he meant. Now I did. The next morning, Diana arrived unannounced again, this time with the buyers. A young couple awkwardly followed her as she proudly showed them around, talking about all the changes they could make. I let her finish before speaking up. I hope you haven't paid a deposit yet, I said to the couple, because this house isn't actually for sale. Diana spun around, furious. Alexandra, don't be ridiculous. Michael already. Michael, I interrupted, doesn't have the legal right to sell this house without me. The buyers looked worried and quickly left. Diana's face turned red with anger. How dare you interfere? This sale is what Michael needs. I smiled, thinking of the documents safely in James's office. No, Diana. What Michael needs is to learn that actions have consequences. And trust me, those lessons are just beginning. The following Monday, I sat in James Harrison's conference room, watching Diana and Michael's faces as they processed what the lawyer had just told them. The color had drained from Diana's face, while Michael kept shaking his head in disbelief. This can't be legal, Diana sputtered, her manicured fingers crumpling the property deed James had placed before them. Howard would never. Howard did exactly that, James interrupted, sliding his reading glasses up his nose. The house requires both Michael and Alexandra's signatures for any sale to be valid. Furthermore, he pulled out another document. Howard's will specifically states that in the event of any attempted unauthorized sale, full ownership transfers to Alexandra alone. Michael slumped in his chair. Dad knew, he muttered. He knew I'd messed this up somehow. He knew his son. I corrected quietly. And he knew his wife. I looked pointedly at Diana, who was still shaking her head in denial. That's not all, James continued, producing the file Robert Chen had compiled. We also have evidence of financial impropriety at the firm, specifically related to expenses charged for non-existent client meetings. Michael's head snapped up. I could see the moment he realized what that meant. All those hotel rooms and expensive dinners with Jessica, charged to the firm's accounts. The board of partners would be very interested in these expense reports, James noted. Not to mention the ethics committee of the State Bar Association. You wouldn't, Michael whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. No, wouldn't, I agreed. Not if you agree to my terms. Diana tried to rally. Terms? You ungrateful. Quiet, Mom, Michael cut her off, surprising us all. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. What terms, Alex? I laid out my conditions clearly. First, you'll sign a quitclaim deed transferring the house entirely to me. Second, you'll agree to an uncontested divorce with a fair division of our other assets. Third, I turned to Diana, you will never again interfere in my life or my property. And if we refuse? Diana demanded, though her voice trembled slightly. I opened my laptop and turned it to face them. On the screen was a draft email to the firm's board of partners with Robert's full investigation attached. My finger hovered over the send button. Your choice, I said simply. The fight seemed to drain out of Michael all at once. You really planned for everything, didn't you? No, I corrected him. Your father did. He loved you, Michael, but he saw who you really were. He wanted to protect both of us, me from your betrayal, and you from your own worst impulses. Diana stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is blackmail. This is consequences, James replied calmly. I've drawn up all the necessary paperwork. Shall we proceed? An hour later, it was done. Michael signed everything without further protest, while Diana sat in stony silence. As they stood to leave, Michael paused at the door. "I'm sorry, Alex," he said quietly. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry." "I know," I replied, "but sometimes sorry isn't enough." After they left, James handed me the final signed documents. "Howard would be proud," he said warmly. "You handled this exactly as he hoped you would." That evening, I sat on my back porch, looking out at the garden Howard had helped me plant years ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Jessica had left him after learning about the scandal at the firm. Diana had apparently retreated to her sister's house in Palm Springs, telling her friends she needed a spiritual retreat. I poured myself a glass of Howard's favorite whiskey, the bottle he'd given me for safekeeping before he died. "You were right," I said to the quiet evening air, "about everything." 2 months later, I transformed the house into truly my own space. Michael's law firm had quietly asked him to resign to avoid public scandal, and he'd moved to another state to start over. Diana's carefully curated social circle had crumbled once the truth about her schemes came out. As for me, I was finally at peace in my home, surrounded by memories of the one person in that family who had truly cared about doing the right thing. Howard's last gift hadn't just been the house. It had been the strength to stand up for myself and the wisdom to know when to use it. Sometimes, I thought as I tended to my roses, the best revenge isn't fighting back immediately. It's waiting patiently until your opponents have dug their own graves, then simply stepping aside to let them fall in. The house stands as a testament to that lesson, and to the power of quiet strength over loud manipulation. Diana and Michael had underestimated me, just as they had underestimated Howard's foresight. Their mistake had cost them everything, while I remained exactly where I belonged, in the home that was always meant to be mine. "At least wear some real jewelry for once," my mother-in-law, Margaret, said with a sigh, looking at my simple pearl necklace like it was worthless. "It's Christmas dinner, not a quick trip to the store." I touched the pearls gently. I had bought them with my first investment profit, so they meant a lot to me. But instead of arguing, I just smiled and kept setting the table. "My name is Olivia. I'm 35 years old, and for the past 8 years, my husband's family has called me a gold digger. They think I married Andrew just for his family's money. His parents, Margaret and Robert, own Harrison Technologies, a big company. But what they don't know is that they are completely wrong about me." "Be careful with those plates, dear," Margaret added. "They're expensive. Try not to break them like last year." That never happened. Margaret liked to make up stories to make me look bad. Robert, my father-in-law, barely looked up from his phone. He was probably checking stock prices again. Andrew caught my eye and gave me a small smile, as if to say, "I know, I'm sorry." We had agreed long ago to let his parents believe whatever they wanted for now. Then, Andrew's sister, Amanda, walked in, swinging her designer handbag. "Mom, did you tell Olivia about the charity gala next week?" "Oh, wait, never mind. It's $1,000 per plate. She probably wouldn't be interested." I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable, Margaret said, patting Amanda's hand. "It's not her usual crowd." I held back a laugh. If only they knew that I had bought an entire table at that event, through my own investment company. Dinner went exactly as I expected. Margaret kept talking about Amanda's achievements while making small, cutting comments about my humble background. Robert hardly spoke, focused on his phone. "Did you see the Wilson family's new yacht?" Amanda asked while eating. "Now that's success. Not like some people who can't even afford proper jewelry." She glanced at my pearls. I took a sip of wine, thinking about how I had actually bought a shipping company last summer. The Wilson's yacht. It was parked at one of my marinas. But I didn't say anything, not yet. Well, Margaret sighed dramatically, not everyone is born into wealth. Some people have to marry into it. Just then, Robert suddenly looked up from his phone, his face pale. "The stock," he muttered. "It's dropping." The table went silent. Harrison Technologies stock had been unstable lately. I knew this well. After all, I had been secretly buying shares for years. "It's just a small dip, Dad," Andrew said. "You don't understand," Robert snapped. "Someone has been buying large amounts of our stock. If this continues, we could lose control of the company." Margaret's fork hit her plate. "Who would do that?" "Probably Phoenix Investments. Amanda guessed, naming their biggest rival. I wiped my mouth with my napkin. It was time. Actually, I said, it's not Phoenix Investments. They all turned to me. Margaret scoffed. And how would you know? She gave a mocking smile. You should just be grateful Andrew married you. A gold digger should know her place. The room felt colder. Andrew started to defend me, but I gently touched his arm. It's okay, I said, pulling out my phone. I think it's time you all knew the truth. Robert narrowed his eyes. Knew what? I turned my phone screen toward them. I know who's been buying Harrison Technologies shares because it's me. Through my investment firm, I now own 60% of the company. Silence. Margaret's face turned pale. Robert stared at my phone, shocked. Amanda opened her mouth but said nothing. But, that's impossible, Margaret stammered. You're just a gold digger? I finished for her. Actually, I was a successful investor long before I met Andrew. The humble background you mock? It taught me the value of smart investments, and now your company's future depends on me. Robert grabbed my phone with shaking hands. This can't be real. You're bluffing. Check your records, I said calmly. Look up Stellar Investments. I started building my portfolio at 22, and Harrison Technologies is just my latest purchase. These pearls. I bought them with my first investment profit. That simple car I drive, I own the dealership. And just like that, the room fell completely silent. Margaret's crystal wine glass shook as she set it down. You're lying, she said, but her voice wasn't as strong as usual. This must be some kind of trick. I pulled up another screen on my phone. Do you want to see the official documents? I have the ownership certificates, the reports from the last 5 years. Everything is right here. Under the table, Andrew squeezed my hand, a small, silent way of showing support. He had always known the truth. He had watched me build my business while his family ignored me, thinking I was just a pretty face who married for money. But the company meetings, Robert stammered, his face turning red. You never came to any of them. I did, I said, taking another sip of wine. Remember Sarah Chen, the quiet woman from Stellar Investments who sat in the back, the one no one ever paid attention to? I smiled as realization dawned on his face. She was my representative. I wanted to observe the company before making myself known. Amanda let out a nervous laugh. This is crazy. Dad, you can't believe her. She's obviously making it up. Check your phone, Amanda, I suggested. The news just went public 10 minutes ago. It should be everywhere by now. As if on cue, everyone's phones started buzzing with notifications. Andrew pulled out his phone and read aloud. Breaking news. Stellar Investments CEO Olivia Harrison revealed as majority shareholder of Harrison Technologies. Stock prices surged 15% on announcement. Margaret grabbed her phone and started scrolling quickly. With every swipe, her face grew paler. This can't be happening, she whispered. All this time? Yes, I confirmed. While you were mocking my simple clothes and thinking I wasn't good enough, I was building something real. Those charity events you thought I couldn't afford, I was secretly funding them for years. Robert slumped back in his chair, looking exhausted. Why? He asked. Why did you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked softly. From the beginning you decided I was a gold digger, someone who didn't deserve your son or your family name. I tried to show you who I was, but you never listened. I let out a small sigh. Last Christmas, remember when I suggested updating the company's technology? You laughed and told me to stick to dinner parties. Phoenix Investments took that same idea and increased their market share by 30%. Amanda, who had been quiet, suddenly stood. This doesn't change anything, she snapped, though her voice shook. Money doesn't buy class. You'll never be one of us. I looked at her with a small smile. You're right, Amanda. I'm not one of you. I didn't inherit my wealth or marry into it. I built it. And now I own your family's company. Robert leaned forward, fear clear in his eyes. What are you going to do? He asked. You're not going to sell it, are you? That depends, I said, pulling a folder from my purse and placing it on the table. This is my plan for the company. Harrison Technologies has potential, but it needs big changes. Margaret hesitated before reaching for the folder. And if we refuse? You won't, Andrew said, speaking firmly for the first time. Because Olivia's plan will save the company. I've seen it. It's brilliant like everything else she does. I spread out the documents. First, we'll fix the gender pay gap. Then, we'll update the technology like I suggested last year. Finally, we'll start a scholarship program to help young investors from low-income backgrounds. Robert picked up a page and stared at the numbers. These projections, they're incredible. They're actually a safe estimate, I said. If everything goes right, we'll make even more. The room fell silent as my in-laws took in the truth. Everything they believed about me was falling apart. All those times, Margaret murmured, when you helped with charity events, when you suggested investments, you actually knew what you were doing. I did, I said simply. And now you have a choice. We can work together and make this company stronger, or you can fight me and watch everything you built fall apart. What's it going to be? 6 months after that fateful Christmas dinner, I sat in what used to be Robert's office, now mine, reviewing the latest quarterly reports. Harrison Technologies had transformed beyond anyone's expectations, except perhaps my own. The door opened and Margaret stepped in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. This had become our weekly ritual, though it had taken months to get here. The numbers look good, she said, placing a cup on my desk. Her voice carried none of its former condescension. Better than good, I replied, gesturing to the charts on my screen. We're up 40% since implementing the new tech infrastructure. The employee satisfaction scores have doubled, and our charitable foundation just awarded its first round of scholarships. Margaret sat down, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. I've been thinking about last Christmas, she said quietly. About how wrong we were about you. About everything. I looked at her, remembering the woman who'd spent years trying to diminish me. She looked smaller now, but somehow more real. It wasn't personal, I said. You were protecting what you thought was yours. No, she shook her head. It was worse than that. We were snobs, convinced that wealth only counted if it came with the right background. When Robert told me yesterday that he's stepping down and fully supporting your leadership, I realized how much we changed. The company had indeed changed. Robert, after initially struggling with the transition, had become one of my strongest supporters. His years of experience, combined with my fresh perspective, had created a synergy no one expected. Amanda took longer to come around, but last week she'd approached me about joining the Scholarship Foundation's board. I want to learn, she'd said, without a trace of her former smugness. I want to understand how you build all this. The sound of laughter from the hallway drew our attention. Andrew appeared in the doorway grinning. The new tech team's prototypes just tested off the charts, he announced. Even Phoenix Investments is asking for a partnership. I smiled, remembering how they'd once been our biggest rivals. Now, under my leadership, we were redefining industry cooperation. Have them send over the proposal, I said. And Andrew, make sure they know about the scholarship program. I want this partnership to benefit more than just the bottom line. Margaret watched this exchange with something like wonder. You know, she said, I used to worry that Andrew was making a mistake, marrying someone. Well, someone like you. I couldn't have been more wrong. You've not only preserved our family's legacy, you've made it better. I thought about the day I met Andrew, both of us young analysts at different firms. He'd seen past my humble clothes and packed lunches, recognizing the ambition that drove me. While his family saw a gold digger, he saw a partner. The Christmas gala is coming up, I mentioned, turning back to my computer. I think it's time we announce the expansion of the scholarship program. Double the recipients, focus on women in tech. Margaret's eyes widened. That's wonderful. I'd like to help if you'll let me. I may not understand all the technical aspects, but I know about building relationships. I nodded, acknowledging her offer. This was the Margaret I'd hoped existed beneath the prejudices, someone who, when given the chance, could rise above her own limitations. Robert appeared in the doorway, looking energized despite his recent decision to step back. The board just unanimously approved your proposal for the Green Tech Initiative, he announced. I've never seen them so excited about a new direction. I stood up, gathering my files. Then let's not keep them waiting. We have a company to run and lives to change. As we walked to the boardroom, I caught my reflection in the window. I was still wearing my pearl necklace, not because it was simple or modest, but because it reminded me of where I came from and what I'd built. The holiday decorations were already going up in the office, though Christmas was months away. This year would be different. No more snide remarks or subtle digs. Instead, we'd celebrate as a real family, one built on respect and understanding rather than assumptions and prejudice. Andrew caught up with us, slipping his hand into mine. "Ready to shake things up some more?" he whispered. I smiled, touching my pearls with my free hand. "Always," I replied, "but this time we're all moving forward together." The boardroom doors opened to a future none of us had imagined last Christmas, one where success wasn't measured by last names or inheritance, but by vision, determination, and the courage to prove everyone wrong.